Good evening, everyone, and welcome this to our, well, it's really our sixth program, but it's our third program when it comes to actual webinaring together. Some of those are solo programs. What I've done is to give Joe the first three programs, or let's just say commentaries that we'll be working on together, and she tells me, I think that rather than make them into handouts, which does involve some, I have found some problems with that she'll be sending them to you as attachments, but I'll let her decide that. And, you know, we have a lot of these commentaries going over many, many years, you know, because they were made over a 5-year period, let's say, and there's much to discuss when we do it together, according to your interests. I just want to welcome those who have come along, and I have to say, you know, as I often say when it comes to cosmic fire, or identify as being, that you are among the brave that are willing to do that, or at least you're awake. So want to welcome Annette from New Zealand, and Antoinette, and Asha, and Brennan, Catherine, and Chris, Deborah, Eric, Francois, Frederick, who happens to be right here with me in the temple. Okay. And Ishtar, and Joe He, Karen, Kim, and Margot, and Marina. Okay. Martha, and Michael, I think it's Moultron, and anyway, you'll have to correct me. Nicholas, hi, and Natney, and Nienka, and Roz, and Stephen, Tanya, Tia, and Tuya. I'll put you over there on the other side, Tuya. And Ville, yes, and I owe you a letter, Ville. We'll be talking. Umise, and Zenaidi, and Anne Veronica. So welcome to you, and here's on this side it's Tuya and myself, and Joe is somewhere, and if she's had to go out for a little while, she will be back. Well, we're beginning with the first few pages of a treatise on cosmic fire, that great seminal book from which so many of the Tibetan's books were written. He gave the seed in cosmic fire, and then he wrote on the process of magic and astrology and psychology. All of those have their roots in the cosmic fire work. He wrote on glamour and telepathy, and some of that is covered there as well, and then certainly extensively on initiation. And that he began his work with Initiation, Human and Solar, in 1922, and that was a book for the general public. Although let's not assume that it contains only simple things, because as I've told you before, sometimes I'm looking for the answer to a question from one of the later books, and I can't find it any other place but in Initiation, Human and Solar, way, way back at the beginning. So it's as if the Tibetan has written one great book, and by the time the different aspects of these books begin to interplay with each other volumes seem to appear in the ether. So it's a voluminous study, and it's undertaken on the third subray of the second ray. Love, wisdom is the second ray, and creative intelligence is the third ray. And I think that pretty well describes how the Tibetan works. Some kind of a third subray of the second ray, and also, I think, just like the Buddha, a third ray monad or a third ray spirit. I hesitate to I hesitate to speculate about what the rays might be on these higher turns of the spiral on the logoic plane, but as you know, finally, each one of us has one of three rays on the sea of fire level, which is the logoic plane, or the very first plane. And, who knows what that is, except that we can say, for the Christ, it's got to be the second ray. No question about it. So all of that will appear, but the two monadic rays are appearing on the highest levels of the cosmic physical plane, and you see them right there. And all of us in our higher spiritual nature are possessed by these great streams of energy. Now, they're very, we're not going to be able to measure those except in the most arcane inner psychic method. But maybe some of the outer rays of the personality and so forth, we can find what's called those expert means of diagnosis that the Tibetan promises for us. And, already people are thinking about those things in a way that may lead to some beneficial result. Now, gosh, look at all those files that are open. My computer's just likely to freeze up on me sometime here and send us all back to go, back to the beginning. But let me get rid of some stuff because it's just too much. That's the trouble.
While you're doing that, I want to remind people the handouts were sent, and I have heard that some people have received them. There were 2 documents and then a final document sent from me via email.
Terrific. Okay, I actually ended up sending you 3, and one was separated off. You're also going to be getting this beautiful brochure from Tuya. We maybe have, I think it's ready to go. We just have a little more to do on it, maybe. But I'm just showing you it because it has to do with our gathering here. Isn't that Capricorn constellation wonderful? Look at that big triangle. It's so connected with the third aspect of divinity, the creative intelligence. So we'll be sending this to you and to all the people that are on the constant contact list. And this has to do with our festival week of the new group of world servers that we are holding here right in the Temple of Silence for 1 week from December 21st through December 28th. And I know a lot of people will be listening in and webinaring with us, and they will be broadcasting with us, but some people already are coming and joining us, and we are very happy about that because there's something you can gain from the presence. Here's this marvelous picture of Maitreya Buddha. It's not a picture, it's a statue, and in the Temple of Silence we have a lot of things that suggest the synthesis of religions. So this will be sent to you quite soon. And look at the horns on that goat. Isn't that magnificent? So we're welcoming you to join us here in the, we call it the Castle of Peace. That's what Rauhanlinna means in Finnish. And, for a real in-depth work in these last days of the era of the Forerunner. The year of the Forerunner, as you know, 1965 to 2025, and so this is the last of the festivals of the new group of world servers, which began back in 1935 in a way, that are occurring. This is the last one that's occurring within the era of the Forerunner. The next one will be 2026, and then technically the John the Baptist phase will be over. And but of course we'll have plenty to do during the remainder of the 21st century. So just gear up for probably a greater expenditure of intelligent, loving, and willful energy than you've ever committed to anything. All right, now. Okay, so let's see what I can find here. And I think I'm going to get rid of this one too. There's just too much going on. Excuse me. Oh, that's a magnificent thing, this living with wolves. You know, someday maybe look at it. It's beautiful how this these two naturalists were taken in, husband and wife, and became part of the wolf family. So much is not understood. There's a sign, Lupus the wolf, which is a constellation that's found in Libra, and it has everything to do with the sacrifice of the form to advance the Christ principle. So you know, and that you'll find that, and Nicholas knows all about that. He studies the geometry and of the constellations and their relationships to each other. It's an amazing thing. Okay, so let's see what I've got going here. I don't need this. And what do I need? I need all my wits is what I need at the moment. And goodness, there we go. Okay. Now, we left off last time, and I have number 6, and I hope you have number 6. This should be number 7, okay? And we're talking about the different kinds of gods that are found where? Now, a deity is simply an expression of the one life, and it's an expression that is as vast as may be possible, or smaller. All of us, you know, St. Paul said to us, you know, Master Hilarion, St. Paul, know ye not that ye are gods? Well, he's saying some pretty esoteric things there to the people who were listening to them, and they could easily be misinterpreted. But actually, each one of us, in essence, is the one universal God. There just is no separation, and the great error in thought is that we think that the separations that our perceptual mechanism offers to our consciousness, we think that those separations are real, and they are not. They are part of the universal Maya. So as separate as things may be to our senses, you know, and they are, that separation is not real. It's only actual within the great illusion. And the great illusion, actually, you know, what is the great illusion? It's the universe itself. It's a necessity that in order to be absolutely infinite, this deity has to manifest also in a finite manner. Well, that gets into the metaphysics of things, but basically, you know, we're going to have to look very deeply for the reason behind any universe. You know, in a way, the absolute deity doesn't need any universe. You know, I mean, it contains and is every possible perception and relationship. It's the whole thing. It doesn't need anything in that sense. And that's even more true of the absolute itself, the absoluteness, the one and only isness, I like to call it. But nevertheless, these universes keep on appearing, and how many universes have there been? There's no way to put a definite number on it, because when you're dealing with infinity, no matter what definite number you've got, there's always more before and more behind, if you look at it in a linear manner. So how long have we been doing this? Forever, actually, is the word. And if that sort of begins to mess up your mind, well, it certainly has mine and other people, then you just have to ponder on what the meaning of forever really is. And it's always been forever. If I went back 1,000,000 universes and I asked the same question, the answer would be the same: forever. So our ideas about time and space have to be adjusted. And the overcoming of the initial illusion of time and space is a great necessity as we seek enlightenment. Now, that's what we're all seeking, If you reach the third initiation, it's called the enlightenment. It's called Satori. There was, Dr. Suzuki it was, and he was visiting the United States back in the 50s, and he spoke very much for the Zen perspective. But it is the transfiguration, also the enlightenment, the Satori, it's the illumination. And if you are aiming at that particular unfoldment of consciousness, it begins to introduce us to what the spirit really is. We can use those words till we're blue, spirit and soul and all the rest of it, but if we don't have the experience of it, just even a flash, then we don't know what we're talking about. And we have to, in these kinds of studies, which are esoteric studies, we have to know. Now, the Tibetan gave a lot of material to HPB, and she wrote The Secret Doctrine based on that material, and Francis Donald has undertaken the huge task of reading through The Secret Doctrine, along with many wonderful illustrations and biographical life of HPB and so forth. And it's presented a little bit differently in Cosmic Fire. What is Cosmic Fire? The book. And it is said to be, and this is a mouthful, the psychological key to the secret doctrine. Think about that. We're studying a book, 1,283 pages, something like that, that gives the psychological key to the secret doctrine. So, we're going to be understanding all the variations in energy, how they all combine with each other, how to evolve, how to retrace our emanative stream until we go back to the beginning of the state at the beginning of the universe, which is not the Big Bang. It's way, way beyond and above anything that people have been calling the Big Bang. It is absolutely fundamental to every universe. Why should we little human beings be interested in this? Well, why should we not? We have a mind that is inquiring about the truth. And shall we be satisfied with lesser explanations when greater explanations are available? And I think we should not be satisfied. At least I've never been satisfied. And I think that I turned once, maybe with this group, to page 203 or so in Esoteric Psychology, and it talked about the great second ray and how they are ever unsatisfied, ever dissatisfied with their highest attainment and their highest learning. You know, some of this is a little bit of a review, but it's important, and I'm just going to go there, you know, just so you can see it. And I think it's page 203, or it's pretty close anyway. It's a little bit later. Sympathy, devotion, third ray of higher mind, and here it is, I think. Well, anyway, just read this. It should be completely, it should have a highlighting in it, but it doesn't, and I'm sorry about that. But here we go. Let's see, I can find this. It says somehow ever dissatisfied, and here it is. Well, this is really important. The characteristic method of approaching the path that we're all treading would be by close and earnest study of the teaching till they become so much a part of man's consciousness as no longer to be merely intellectual knowledge, but a spiritual rule of living, bringing in the intuition and true wisdom. So, you know, I'm assuming that if you stick with the Tibetan, either your monad or your soul is on the second ray. And I'm just, you know, I'm trying to find this thing here, but I'm not doing so well. So it's somewhere here, and I'm just going to look for the word highest, and let's just see, and attainments. Let's see if that gives it to me. It should be right here. Anyway, when I find it, I'll let you know. It basically tells you ever dissatisfied with the highest intellectual attainments and needing to go on beyond that. Okay, now, here are these gods at the very top of the top of the universe. Top of the universe to you. Good morning, top of the universe. Okay. Let's just say that they're kind of dramatized here as the unmanifest, as spirit matter, and as some kind of a creative intelligence, and I don't think there's any real order here. The Father, Son, and Holy Ghost is correct, but Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva is not correct. And in the Vedanta, Sat, Chit, and Ananda is not correct. It should be Sat, Ananda, Chit. And the unmanifest spirit, matter, and creative wisdom is correct. And existence, bliss, and intelligence is correct. So somewhere at the very top of the universe, which is way beyond what this chart shows, are these three fundamental deities. Now, they're called here by different names, and you just have the feeling that the Tibetan is not really talking in an entirely universal manner. He's talking about something that's much closer to home. He's talking about something that has to do with our solar system, or maybe our one about whom not may be said, but no further than that. But we can carry it further. We can see maybe what's happening when a universe comes forth from absolute infinitude. The first cosmic logos, impersonal and unmanifested, the precursor of the manifested. And this, you know, is all, of course, metaphysics, and maybe you have a taste for it, maybe you don't. And I'm asking these things, should the first cosmic logos not be called as well the spirit of the universe? Well, I think it should. And it seems that spirit remains forever unmanifested in the ordinary sense of assuming some degree of formal limitation, even while being the cause of manifestation. So all that is manifested is essentially spirit. It depends on what words you want to use, of course. Spirit is a term which can be applied to that part of the Trinity which expresses electric fire, whereas life is truly unmanifested. I think the real meaning of life. So basically, we have spirit, soul, and matter. We have the first, second, and third rays. We have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And life itself, depending on how you use that word, should represent the absolute essence of things. And I like to think that the absolute can be called life, manifesting in universe as life. I changed the capitalization. So, if we say that the first no, we cannot touch the first cosmic logos, okay? This is this is so far from our capabilities. We're doing our best to just rise to the top of the cosmic physical plane, and hardly any of us have complete soul expression and infusion. We're way, way down here on the cosmic physical plane, and what we're really talking about is something way beyond this. This is not even a galaxy, okay? This cosmic parabram is not the being that ensouls a galaxy. And how many trillions of galaxies are there, and so forth. So, look, we've got a long time in terms of Earth years before we can take up the meaning of what life is. And the Tibetan, he almost, he has a little fun with us, and somewhere he tells us, do we know what life is? And he says, absolutely not. Just as we don't know really what the will is. But we are adventuring souls. We are adventuring consciousnesses. And we're willing to reach out into the unknown in order to come in touch with areas of vibration and even non-vibration, which we would never touch unless we made the great effort. So anyway, we've got this first cosmic logos. It usually means something much lower, but I'm kind of taking it up to the top of the universe, to the truly universal, a position, and to me it means the universal logos, the one and only cosmic being, but it's not the absolute. In essence, it is, but in terms of the limitation that it has, as every universe is limited, it is not the absolute, formally speaking. When we deal with the absolute, we're dealing with the impossibility of limitation. Think about that. Because in order for limitation to occur, there has to be another factor that is the limitation. Call it a boundary, call it another whatever, and there isn't. There is no other factor. The other, the otherlessness of the absolute defines it. There is no space in it. There's no time in it. Nothing of that nature. It just is utter beingness forever. Okay. So why is that important? Any of this important? And I guess you might say, because look, we are that. We are that, and basically the old Hindu and the Vedantic and Brahman methods inherited from Atlantis, and on and on and on, going back, inherited from Shambhala, inherited from the Solar Logos, inherited from the cosmic logos, and on and on and on and on. They say there's just no other being. That's it. So you cannot have an independent existence, independent from that which you essentially are. And I think every day we should remind ourselves that, as strange as it seems, and as different as it seems, I mean, you know, we have our life, we have a mirror we look into, you know, we have a car we drive, we have food we eat, we're walking on two legs at this present time, and so forth. That's not who we are, essentially. Now, it's who we have to deal with forever, cyclically, but it's not who we are. And we need to always remind ourselves of that. And I don't know what difference it'll make in your life or my life. I think it will make a really big difference. You know, sometimes you look at these enlightened Buddhas, they seem pretty happy, don't they? Some of them look like they've eaten too much as well. Okay, but they know something about their identity. And this is the foundation that the Tibetan is trying to present to us, the foundation of it all. Then, okay, the second cosmic logos, I guess it's symbolized by this. I mean, look, there's always going to be a boundary here when dealing with cosmic logoi. The only boundless thing, and you can't even call it a thing, you got to call it a no thing, is the boundless, immutable principle. You know, brought forward as a fundamental of the secret doctrine. That's otherwise, you know, this boundary doesn't make sense because it's an other, it's different. As a matter of fact, I like to joke that the absolute is absolutely pointless. Or, you know what I mean by pointless? Okay. A point would be yet another entity in addition to the absolute. There just isn't such a thing. So it is so homogeneous, so utterly identical to itself in beingness that there are none of those points. And if you come to the identify as being group, you will see, and I will go through what I think a point is. It's certainly a lot more than a little dot that your pen makes on a piece of paper. It has no dimension whatsoever, and therein lies some problems, some problems for time and space, which ultimately don't really exist, even though they seem to. So now we're dealing with spirit matter here, and also, I don't know, maybe with the second fundamental of the secret doctrine, the law of periodicity. What does he say? The second cosmic logos, spirit matter, and he calls it life, the spirit of the universe. I kind of like to reserve the term spirit for something higher. But anyway, this, to me, this second part of the great universal God, who is still a bounded finite God, and remember what I'm saying here. I'm saying that a universal logos is a bounded, finite deity. No matter how vast it may seem, it is bounded. And that is a different thing altogether from absoluteness, which is the boundless immutable principle. So, okay, this logos to me expresses or represents the engagement of spirit with itself through dynamic self-reflection. In other words, I'm going to make it an easy term. You're looking at yourself in the mirror. I'm going to call it self-sight. Self-sight. It engages with itself through self-sight. It can break down in the universe into the observer and what you observe and the act of observing. And look, there's nothing else to observe. It's, if anything is going to arise, it's going to be itself. That's all. There's just nothing else there. So all these little parts and pieces, of which we are one, is the self-sight or self-observation of the great universal God, who has ever been the same and ever different forever. Cyclically it appears, cyclically it disappears. Appear, disappear, appear, disappear. And what do we have? We've got the great breath. So I like to look at the second cosmic logos. I'm saying, here's what I'm saying, and it's a little radical. I'm saying when spirit sees itself, that sight is matter. Not that matter's out there, and then spirit looks at matter. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying when spirit, or this universal deity, sees what it itself contains, that sight is matter itself as far as the universe is concerned. So I'm saying that matter is a psychological factor, and it has to do with self-observation. It's in the Kabbalah somehow, this thing, divine mirroring. Just think about that, There's only one actor, and you're it. No matter how many parts and aspects you discover, it's all going to be yourself. It's what I call, sometimes the philosophers are a little bit the condescending towards the idea of solipsism. And they say, oh, well, these poor benighted souls, they think they're the only one in the universe. Okay, well, I just am a poor benighted soul who thinks that I, and essential you, and essential anything, is the only essential in the whole universe. Now, that's going to take some thinking. That's going to take some pondering before it begins to look like it's real, okay? So anyway, we have to be very careful about the use of the term life. And here's HPB. I had it spelled wrong before. HPB said about life, pervading spirit, soul, and matter. Remember the big quote. Matter of fact, I'm going to read that quote. The term life should not be used, according to HPB, for the second cosmic logos, at least in my opinion. And I'm going to try to find that quote. If I succeed, you'll recognize it. And if not, we'll find it another time. Life which pervades them all. Well, all right. Okay, here we go. This will probably do. Matter is the vehicle for the manifestation of soul on this plane of existence, and soul is the vehicle on a higher plane for the manifestation of spirit. And these three are a trinity synthesized by life, which pervades them all. Now, we've left will out of the picture entirely, haven't we? So there's going to be something called the will, which is the first efflux of life. So basically he's saying this in different ways. Basically he's saying the same thing. Life we look upon as the one form of existence manifesting in what we call matter, or what, incorrectly separating them, we call spirit, soul, and matter. Notice, incorrectly separating these three, which are synthesized by the pervader, which is life. Now, he says, do you know what life is? And then he doesn't give us a chance, and he says, no, you don't know what life is. Okay, so let's see if I can get out of this thing. I'm somewhere here. Okay. Oops. Oh, my goodness. Okay, here I am. Okay, good. It's always good to find yourself, isn't it? Okay, so I was looking in this, and I was saying that it is incorrect to separate spirit, soul, and matter, because spirit is, in a way, God. Matter is the self-reflection of God, and soul is the act of seeing oneself in reflection. They should not be separated. Matter is the vehicle for the manifestation of soul on this plane of existence. Soul is the vehicle for the manifestation of spirit, and these three act, I suppose, as a trinity. As a trinity, are synthesized by life, which pervades them all. So, to me, at least at my present level of ignorance, life is isness, beingness, pure being. Anyway, I'm taking all these things up to the very top of the universe when any universe begins. And I'm not just looking at more local issues. Now, here's the third cosmic logos, and basically the third cosmic logos, cosmic ideation, the universal world soul. Okay. And I'm asking, but isn't soul equivalent to consciousness? And I say yes. And this logos appears to be the basis of all creativity. The preferred name for the third ray, according to the Tibetan, is the ray of creative intelligence. Of course, here we are speaking of the ultimate third ray Lord of the cosmos, and not only close to home. If we were confining ourselves to the solar system, we would talk about Brahma, the Brahma aspect of the solar logos. So the three fundamentals of the secret doctrine, which we can correlate with some of the things DK is saying here. There is one boundless, immutable principle. Let's see what I've got here. I might have a freeze, is what, okay. There's one boundless, immutable principle. There is a basic law called the law of periodicity, which means alternation forever. And all souls are one with the oversoul. And perhaps in that third fundamental of the secret doctrine is our right to identify as the oversoul. Now, what would it mean to you if you say, I am life? In my absolute essence, I manifest identical with myself forever, but because of the great breath, I manifest cyclically in periodical manner, and anything that I become, whether it's a bug, a crocodile, an ape, a human being, an angel, a god, they're all one with the oversoul, which is the one consciousness in universe. Okay. So maybe that's enough of that. Because sometimes when you're dealing with the abstractions, it's harder to, get a handle on things. So anyway, DK says, from these basic creative principles in successive gradations, there issue in ordered sequence the numberless universes comprising countless manifesting stars and solar systems. Well, what is a universe after all? DK sometimes says it's just a solar system. That's all the universe really is. But from a larger point of view, the countless universes are what? An infinite succession of cyclically appearing and disappearing universes which had no beginning and will never have an end. Now just think about that for a minute. There's no way that what you are can ever be extinguished. You can go through pleasant or unpleasant experiences, but you cannot be eradicated. You cannot be eradicated because you are life, you are the self-observer, you have a consciousness which has created many lesser and lesser and lesser emanations. Way, way down here we are right now, except we're at every level. That's another mystery. Okay, we're way, way down here, but at the same time, we are life itself. Now, obviously, these metaphysical assertions of the secret doctrine require a lot of pondering. We can say, look, this is way, way beyond what are you taking us here for? Because we've got enough problems as it is, just dealing with what we call life in our little solar system, in our little environment, on our little planet, and let's just be practical. Well, I've never found anything that is more practical than knowing who one is, really. And I really emphasize the word really. I find it to be the most practical thing. So you do not misguide. See, way, way down here, surrounded by what I call immersion into matter, or I call it pracritic immersion, because that's that old word, prakriti, it means matter. We have such a limited point of view. We're just like tiny little microscopic man, he calls us. But if we get a handle on the fact that our real identity is really other than all the things we can see and separate and compare and relativize and, beyond this and that, this and that, this and that, then it's going to make a tremendous difference in how we live. Now, you can get the idea about it. I often say, hey, I know this, but then why don't I live better? Because it hasn't sunk in the way one day it will. And pay attention to this substratum. See, you and everything else, you are the substance of the universe. You are the substandingness of the universe, in addition to being this tiny microscopic little illusion, which has to be dealt with in the right way. So, I've often said I'm asking for the dual curriculum of relativity and of being. Can we actually do that? Now here, is an old theosophical diagram, and it's showing the way back, just in general, of course. Everybody has a different and unique way back to what one really is. But it's showing that although you seem to be a little circle, you're really a much bigger circle, which itself is a little circle, which is really a much bigger circle, which itself is a little circle, which is really a much bigger circle, and on and on and on. And this map doesn't really do it. It doesn't really do it, because there's more than 7 cosmic planes. It's just way more. And, one day we'll know those things, but those kinds of things are even beyond what the masters and the Chohans can actually grasp. Although, since they've named every local galaxy and the kind of energy that comes from every local galaxy, they certainly know a lot more than we know, except that part of us is on the same level that they are, and we know it too. And so just get ready to confront a lot of paradoxes, things where you say, well, that can't be. I mean, that doesn't, that doesn't make sense, or that's not logical. There's a unique logic to these, to the metaphysics of infinity, and to the, when you start dealing with the absolutely infinite being, every kind of limited reasoning, logic, and all that, it just doesn't hold up. And we have to get used to the idea of living in the great contradiction. You can call a thing by many names, or you can call the no thing by many names. Okay, so I took notes, in many classes. I think I taught 5 classes in Cosmic Fire simultaneously. And this was when traveling around, as I said, Australia, New Zealand, and 2 in California, and then we had also in Denmark, a lot of classes were going simultaneously. I took down some of the best notes that the group had come up with. So, I just want to say a couple of things here about that word universe. A universe can be understood as a galaxy, or even as starry systems, even as a solar system. Galaxies are called, interestingly enough, island universes. So distinctions between galaxies and nebulae, as I understand it, only came after 1925 in relation to the work of the astronomer Hubble. So basically, just get used to the idea that you will not always know the level at which the Tibetan is talking. He may be talking about something very close to home, such as our solar system. Well, it's a big deal to get from planet to planet, and the real method is through psychic transference, when we can achieve those things. We talk about a one-way trip to Mars, and everybody is essentially committing suicide if they get in that ship, and they'll never come back and all that. But that is kind of a trip on the material plane. There's other ways to go from planet to planet, and we will wise up to all of these things as we become a true Arhat, a master, a Chohan, a 7th degree Chohan, and an 8th degree Buddha and a 9th degree Buddha. We're going to know a lot more. We just have to have the faith to stay with it and a sense of values which is different from the usual sense of values of the inhabitants of the fourth kingdom of nature. We're going into the fifth kingdom of nature. People like you and me, we're trying. And, even though it's just maybe the first initiation, that is already entering the fifth kingdom of nature. And then we're going to go into the kingdom of planetary lives. And maybe after a long, long trip on the way of higher evolution, we can enter this thing called the kingdom of solar lives. And that's just the beginning of kingdoms, okay? There's so much that lies ahead of us. I tell myself, I've got to remind myself of what an amazing universe with amazing possibilities presents itself to me, to you, and to everyone. I have to remind myself. And if I don't remind myself, I know Tuya will remind me. So I take a risk in talking about it right now. Okay, now I've sometimes turned to page 284 and 285 in Discipleship 2, and I find that to be dealing with additional information on the boundless immutable principle. Basically, he says, look, it's way beyond human thought or comprehension, and certainly I agree with that. And the old Vedantists just summed it up and said, thou art that. And then you have to figure out what that is, okay? Thou art that. You're not this, you're that. Well, or are you this and not that? But, there's this and that as opposites, but there's the use of the word that, we might say all in capitals, that have to do with the absolute God. It's not really a God, it's a principle. And we should always keep in mind it's a very old 6 sentences or trumpeted words on a particular note which was used at the third initiation in ancient times before the stanzas of Dzyan were even written. Think about that. And that's what the Tibetan's giving us, He's got a nice non-expiring library card to the library in Shambhala. And he goes there and he mines for us something that we would never be exposed to by any other means. And this is older than the stanzas of Dzyan, and I find it always inspiring and to contain the essence of what's really happening in our creative process. So I'm just going to read it, and probably I've read it before, but, I memorized it and forgotten it, then memorized it, and it's something really worth memorizing because it places you against a background which is an incredible background, so far beyond, and yet real. So, when he's talking about God here, I think he means the absolute. When I talk about God or the absolute deity, I don't mean the absolute. I just look at the absolute as unfathomable, and there's some kind of derivative from the absolute, which I call the absolute deity, and he can, that deity, it can act, whereas the absolute, in a way, does not act, and yet is the source of all possible division and action. All right, so here goes. Let's get into a meditative state a little bit. meditative state and see if it strikes you, because it just needs so much pondering. I'm just remembering, taking long walks and just repeating these words because they are so deeply significant. And as he said, the seed of all philosophies, right here in these 6 trumpeted words on a certain pitch, opening the door to the third initiation. God is. The Lord for A stands firm. Being exists alone. Naught else is. Number 2, time is. Being descends to manifest. Creation is. Time, then, and form agree. Being and time do not agree. Unity is. The one between comes forth and knows both time and God. But time destroys that middle one, and only being is. Space is. Time and space reverberate and veil the one who stands behind. Pure being is, unknown and unafraid, untouched, for A, unchanged. God is. Time, space, the middle one, with form and process, go, and yet, for A, remain. Pure reason, then, suffices. Being cries forth and says, it's untranslatable, death crumbles all. Existence disappears. Yet all for A remains. Untouched. Immutably the same. God is. So there it is, Somehow, if you lose your way or you lose your track and you find yourself the victim of your emotions or of depressing thoughts, of highs and lows that you can't seem to control, come back to these 6 sentences, which are the seed of all philosophies. And you can read, around this, page 284, 285, in Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 2. And it will, say a bit more, but this is our foundation. When we're talking about the 3 cosmic logoi, okay, by the time we can cognize those 3 cosmic logoi at the very top of the universe, we are those cosmic logoi. And we will recognize it as we seem to have forgotten along the way. So it's really, an extraordinary thing. You go deep, and you find out, okay, the soul of things is sweet, as it is said by Sir Edwin Arnold, who was the poet who wrote, translated the Bhagavad Gita, and also wrote this great poem, 100 pages long, whatever, called The Light of Asia, detailing the stories of the Buddha from the time he recognized himself as being a tiger, and his present consort, his consort then as a tiger. I mean, some of it may be symbolic, but he, under the Bodhi tree, he was able to take the 6th initiation, or at least begin taking it. I mean, who knows how much there is to it, to the ascension initiation. Just the way in the Garden of Gethsemane, the Christ began the process of taking the 6th initiation. For him, leading to the cosmic astral plane; for the Buddha, leading to the cosmic mental plane. All of this seems stranger than fiction, but, the more we get into it, we realize it's not fiction, and it's a huge gift that has been given to us because Master Moria, Master Kutumi, and then later Master DK basically importuned Shambhala, saying, let us give more of the ageless wisdom to humanity. And although it's been a tough go, permission was granted by the great presiding one. So that gives us an idea of the foundation. Now, we don't know where we belong there. Are we talking about the one and only universal deity? Are we talking about galactic logoi and families of such logoi? Are we talking about cosmic logoi? Are we talking about the logos or logoi of a solar system? Well, we're going to get into solar system now. Not this minute, because, of course, these are big and profound thoughts, and but we'll probably feel a little more comfortable about things when we reach page 4. We can say, well, goodness, we've been making a lot of progress here. But where it begins to talk about what is that cosmic existence, who in many ways is the one in whom we live and move and have our being. Who is that Solar Logos, where it can be said of each one of us that we are that which has its home within the sun, meaning that the monad in some way that we cannot fathom, at least at this point, has its home within the sun. Think about that. You're microscopic man. Yeah, we are microscopic man in one way. And at the same time, we are identified with an essential greatness, substantiality, whatever, that is so great you can't even apply the category of size to it. You can't say big or little or vast or not vast. You cannot, because there's just nothing else. Now, is all this just too much for us to take? Or can we take these thoughts and ponder them and start to get the feeling in the heart that, hey, yeah, the dragon just winked at me, and that's who I am, along with being the dragon that just winked. As I said, the dragon has its eye open for a very short time, but later the eyes are open all the time, and it doesn't blink, and it is the all-seeing eye. Now those things wait for us. They wait for us. They lie ahead for us, as ever, because we've been through it more times than you can specify, but always with differences and different archetypes and different tasks and so forth. The principle of unrepeatability is operative. And given absolute infinitude, if you really start to think about what that is, you can you just start combining infinities and you never stop, and it never runs out, and it has everything in it, and in a way, nothing in it. So if these words seem a little peculiar and seem to take you far away from what you're concerned about in your normal life, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be concerned about those things in your normal life, but it means that something else is also happening or not happening, forever, and that if you want to get to the bottom of things or the top of things, or you can't use those opposite terms really, but we always say get to the bottom of things, we've got to spend some relative time practicing being the whole thing. And of course, they can say, well, you have some kind of solipsistic disease or some kind of megalomania and all that. Well, usually the people with megalomania have a huge inferiority complex, which causes them to puff up the formal aspect of their own nature, which they are not at all. So we're not talking about megalomania. We're talking about the profound humility which allows one to see, hear, touch, taste, smell, whatever, all things as equal. Not in form, but as equal in essence. That's what we're talking about. Now, if that's important to you, then all the material you're going to read in Cosmic Fire, which is the curriculum of relativity, is going to take place against the background of your own real being. And you will be on an adventure in consciousness and in identification, which many people just never take and don't want to take because it's too far from what they call home, when in fact it's going to lead them in their perception, or, you know, how I call it, infuception. It's going to lead them exactly back to home. Okay, well, you know, it will go faster, I promise you that, and I'm not going to say when I'm going to fulfill that promise, but it will go faster. And basically, what I'm going to do is copy this. I'm sorry. And I'm going to bring this down here. So this is going to be number 7, you know, and it's going to be, in a way, number 3 of our actual webinars, but I've been counting in there when I'm working in the solo mode. Okay, so it's right here. This is where it is. Okay, and this is the end of number 7. Then I open it up to everybody, right? And this is we're in Scorpio now, friends. We got to go deep. We're in the sign Scorpio. This is the 25th and the 26th of October, and it's not a solo webinar. It's group webinar 3 and continuous webinar 7. Okay, and number 8 comes next time. And number 25, it takes us to the second, something happened here. Yeah, takes us to the 1st of November. Okay. Now, you know, if when we consider these things, we're left a little bit speechless, that's okay. I mean, because in a way, kind of takes your breath away and kind of takes your ability to make forms in the throat center, it takes it away. But maybe there's something, I mean, I know all that, okay, and so do you. But maybe there's something you want to ask, something you want to say. We've only considered a few things, like the seed of all philosophies, and we've considered a great map, and we've considered the first, second, and third logos, and the way the theosophical map is accurate or not accurate, and it's not entirely accurate. And we've looked at certain words like life and spirit, you know, and we've looked at the great quote from the Secret Doctrine, which is repeated many times throughout the Tibetans' work about life pervading spirit, soul, and body or intelligence, matter, spirit, soul, and matter. We've looked at a lot of things. These are fundamentals of the secret doctrine, and look, they are fundamentals to your own life. You'll never escape this. This is what you are. There's no escape. And if we delude ourselves in saying, hey, I'm just a little human being, or as Master Moria says, oh, look at the bipeds, see what they're doing. And he makes fun of the bipeds. He uses that method all the time to compare the human being to an animal, and thereby the human being struggles to be more. So Moria is really a good teacher. He knows how to get us going. So, open to you on anything in occultism, because it all can be related back to cosmic fire. Everything. But remember, carry your big identity. I can't call it big, can't call it little. Carry your real identity along with your illusory self. And remind yourself daily, even if it just takes 2 minutes, of what you really are, and find your own words to say so. And if it seems too preposterous, then do it anyway, and you'll be establishing yourself, whether it's in this life or some lives to come, you'll be establishing yourself in reality. And Kim means the word forever. It's kind of a Scots word, Scotland. And like Auld Lang Syne, there's some Scottish songs that use that particular formation of words to mean forever. Now, if you really want to blow your mind, just start thinking about forever. Somehow I was born always thinking about forever. I remember I was always pushing my mother to write numbers. And turned out she was much better at it than I was. I still have that memory. I think she was aggravated about something, and she just gave in and just wrote a bunch of sequential numbers. And I just wanted to keep going and going and going forever. But, it established in me a certain humility at the age of 3 or 4. For A is forever. And the amazing thing is, you just can't start numbering from this particular universe. If we go back 1 million cyclic universes, it's been forever the same way, infinitely preceded by numberless universes, cyclically appearing and disappearing. It's the only thing in town. It's the only thing that is. So, it's a mind bender. And like my colleague Victoria says, well, if you think too much this way, you're going to lose your mind. Okay, well, I agree. And hopefully what you do is you lose the limitations of the concrete mind. See, basically in all this kind of stuff, it's a third-ray method to a degree, but it doesn't cancel out the second ray and the first ray. And it's taking us into the abstract mind, which, believe me, a lot of us need. And Then it will take us into the intuition. And then it will take us into the true atmic spiritual will. And then it will take us into the beingness of the monad. Now, something just appeared, and I missed it.
Well, I'm putting things in the chat, and the last one was from Stephen.
Right. I got it here. Okay. I have it. Yeah, so I just want to say, Kim, if it freaks your mind out, good. You're losing your mind in a good way. I can't tell you where I dropped mine, somewhere along the path in the last 20 years or maybe 25 years. I lost my mind, and therefore am qualified to teach others how to do it. Okay, so anyway, Stephen here. From Stephen Ray 6, being cries forth and says, do you have a theory as to what is the meaning of the untranslatable? I have 1/5 ideas, 1/5 ideas, 1/5 first ray, fifth ray ideas, wondering if my 2/3 ideas, what they might be. Well, basically, the untranslatable to me, I mean, I take the Tibetan's word because, believe me, he would translate if he could, and he is a master translator. I mean, like I said, with his library card, you're getting material straight from the library in Shambhala, so that's pretty good. And I think it just means, to me, the unchangeability of God as God is presented in these 6 stanzas. Doesn't make any difference if you're alive or dead or you fall to pieces. It doesn't make any difference if there's been, what can I say, quadrillions of different forms in a universe. Nothing changes. Now, Heraclitus said there's nothing as constant but change, but that is in the world of the relative, and there it's true, of course. In the world of illusion, movement and change are constant, and there's nothing, well, nothing really static. And even if you say it's static, it does disappear at some point when the universe disappears, so it's not static. So I think that what he's basically saying is existence disappears, yet all for A remains untouched, immutably the same God is. He's saying that no matter what change appears to be happening, that there is no change. No change forever? Really? No change. And yet, in the finite realm, which must be projected in order to remain absolutely infinite, okay, what did I just say? In the finite universal realm, which must exist in order to remain absolutely infinite, everything changes all the time. So we have to contain the paradoxical contradiction that illusion is constant movement and reality is utter changelessness forever. It kind of gives you an idea about how far we are from reality at our present stage. But at the same time, of course, we've been through this forever. See, the thing is, look, what were you in the previous universe? You were there. As a matter of fact, you were the whole thing. You can't say, well, I was Stephen, or I was Michael, or I was an earlier instantiation of Stephen or Michael. It wasn't that at all. I've given up my individuality to the one being that I am. I was just the universal logos. That's what I was, which is essentially the absolute. And in every universe, no matter how this great being divides itself, none of those divisions last beyond the range of any one universe. They give themselves up to the ultimate universal God, which is what we are. So, although you and I and everybody, everything, even the baddies, real bad, whatever, they all existed forever as the great universal deity, which is simply a reflection of the absolute deity beyond any universe, which is simply a rising, God knows how, maybe God doesn't even know how, an arising from absoluteness of variety. There's no variety in absoluteness, and yet there's no articulated variety. Somehow it is everything that ever could be. And everything that ever could be is shown forth in the nature of the absolute deity, which sees itself as utterly homogeneous and absolutely infinite at the same time. Now, I know, look, all that's a lot of metaphysical stuff. Basically, you don't have to worry about growing outside of the universe, because outside of the universe, you are everything. And you are absoluteness. Inside the universe, it depends on the emanative plan of you, your emanative plan of the one God of any universe. So, look, when I look at this map over here, I can't say that one of these little balls is me and the others are not. As I begin to ascend, I find that I am just as much them and they are just as much me as I am me, or I am I, proper English. I say I am I, okay, great. But I find that I am just as much the apparent them as I am I, and on it goes and on it goes. So I keep on merging with these hierarchical deities that I am. I just discovered I am that. And on and on and on and on, until the only thing that's left is one thing, and that's the universal deity. And who else is there? It's in a way, it's not divided. It divides itself, but it's not divided. And who am I? I'm the same being I've always been, forever, in any manifested universe, but always with a different program to work out. I'm kind of infused with some kind of different archetype, infused with what? Something. And I become that, and I start emanating and all that. But it's not like I am I only. I am as much you as I am I. And I recommend that to your meditative consideration. I am as much you, apparent you, as I am I. And then if you get that, then the way of merging with the apparent others makes itself clear, and you'll discover there are no apparent others. I mean, there are no real others. no others, otherlessness. Okay, I know it's really abstract, and some would say it's foolhardy, but come on, DK said, check out the 17th chapter of John for the best statement on identification that's ever been offered by the Christ. And he offered it, I and them and they and me and we and thou, we and thee and you and us. Come on, that's it. The merging. And he articulated that for us. Now, we may be a very long way from that. The people that are fighting in politics and in the church right now, especially politics, it's just crazy. They're not thinking I am you and you are I, they're just one big fat ego. Like Master Moria, he jokes and he says, the ego is a big ball of fat. He says that actually. But he means the lower ego, of course. And there it's just like a big lump in the field of your consciousness. Well, it takes a while to melt it all down and get rid of it, and become the vanishing point, or it vanishes. So I would say merge, pervade, become what you are, go beyond any ring past not, see all things as one, even though they appear to be different, and find out what infuception really means. I practice it all the time, So he asked me, what are you doing? Sometimes I say, hey, well, I'm practicing infuception. I'm practicing being one. It's, oh, well, that's easy, she says. Okay, maybe for certain ray types it is easy. But some of us that are afflicted with the third ray, we've got to make a federal case out of it. We've got to go into the mentality of it. And it's a bit like Moses. He didn't reach the promised land, right? So the mind stays out of the promised land. It's the allegory. There's a lot, more terrible things about the promised land. We're not talking about the literal thing, but we're talking about the allegory that there is a promised land. And the promised land is the higher levels of the triad and the monad and the mind, which is still in the dense physical body of the planetary logos, will never get you to the promised land. And we'll never know what Jerusalem really means if we rely only upon the mind, but we have to rely somewhat. The mind is, what does it say, a good slave but a poor master. So don't be mastered by the mind, use the mind. What did Ramakrishna say? Oh, the mind is like a thorn. So he says, use the thorn to remove the thorn, and then throw them both away. So, he was a real sage, and he had endless admiration. Swami Vivekananda had endless admiration for him. He said, look, I'm the bhakti, said this student of the Encyclopedia, Vivekananda. He says, the real Gnani, the real knower, is Ramakrishna. Chris. In the chart of the evolution of a solar logos, the 7 rays of our solar logos come from the stars of the Great Bear. Up to a point, they also have an origin earlier, and they originate from the 3rd aspect of the 4th cosmic monadic ray. Well, it's difficult to say because, you know, look at the chart and you begin to realize that unless they put this big circle just where it is, which is our big circle, I call it a sub-parabrahmanic parabrahmanic logos, whatever it is. If you put it over here, you can't make the map. And yet, the person who drew this in, I think it was Keith Bailey, and he said, okay, look, he's the one who suggested yellow. And yellow means the fourth ray. But you can't even make the map unless you put this big circle containing 7 ones about whom naught may be said in the middle of this chart. Otherwise, you're just going to, you know, get all kinds of asymmetry. So maybe we come from a fourth ray sub-para-Brahmanic logos, whatever kind of being that is. I mean, I can't imagine. I don't even know how to calculate it. Maybe someone does. What is this being that has 7 ones about whom naught may be said in its nature as chakras? And by the way, don't be fooled by the word solar logos. He doesn't just necessarily mean a solar system. A galaxy itself can be a solar logos, consisting all of solar logoi and so forth. So the word solar refers to that smallest unit, the star, and it can be used in a variety of ways. It's also very clear that the 7 cosmic logoi, each containing 7 solar logoi, that are one about whom naught may be said, is being referred to as a solar logos. And as I recommended that you go to page 293 of a treatise on cosmic fire and, you know, look at how that diagram is, and actually it's not a diagram, it's something else, it's tabulation, and cosmic fire, and basically 293, and the unknown is a one about whom not be said and has 7 constellations. Well, it's got 7 constellations for chakras, okay? And a cosmic logos has 7 solar logoi for chakras, and maybe a whole lot more solar logoi that are minor chakras and so forth. Just the way there's a lot of minor planets. 7 planetary schemes, yes, major for solar logos, but a bunch of other planetary schemes which are not major. Anyway, this is a very revealing map on page 293 of Cosmic Fire, and now we're going beyond the unknown, because each one of these triangles is an unknown, and basically what's happening is our own solar logos and its solar system as part of a cosmic logos is part of this little green triangle, and so is the Great Bear. Excuse me. And if they could draw it, they'd draw the little bear, they'd draw Orion, they'd draw Draco, they'd draw a bunch of those really big constellations, all fitting, as far as I can see, inside that little green triangle. Now, as it is, they just drew the 7 stars of the Great Bear, and also coming out of that is our solar logos, which is not exactly part of the Great Bear. It's got its own 7 solar systems, of which ours is one. And so the Tibetan has given us something, but not everything, and we have to understand. Now, as far as what those other little triangles are, well, when you think of that, the Pleiades is probably the center with its, I'm just going to say with its 1,000 stars. It doesn't really have, that we've discovered, 1,000 stars, but it's got something like 800 in it, and it has, it is the sort of very hub of this green triangle. Now just think about those clusters of stars, so many of them. What other clusters can we be talking about that would be the center of these other triangles? And then when you think about those huge clusters, then what is this big yellow being here that contains them all as chakras? It's not the unknown, it's the super unknown. And 7 of them are chakras in this thing called a cosmic Brahman, and whatever being that is, and I don't think it's yet to the galaxy. I think it's something else. It's not there yet. We're not looking at any galaxies here. It's too early for that. Galaxies can have trillions of stars, or certainly hundreds of, well, billions can have that. So he cannot stretch out into these vast structures in a little map like this. So the answer is, yeah, it could be a 4th ray sub-parabrahmic logos, or that he might have just put it there because that's the only way to represent it without running off the page. We'll just have to find out what we think as we go along. And when the 7 stars of our 7 rays come from the 7 stars, that's just the beginning. There are so many septonates as you begin to ascend that the 7 stars of the Great Bear, although proximate to our solar system and to its planetary logoi, they are not the source. You would have to go up to the top of the universe, so to speak, and find the fundamental universal septonate, which for any universe are the 7 spirits before the throne. There's lots of thrones, and the ultimate throne in a universe is the universal God, universal deity. Okay, and then, well, a cosmic monadic ray. Now we are talking about the monadic rays of great beings. Of course, we're way beyond what we can know for certain. It's hard enough to know about our own monadic rays, except to say that we know that greater beings do have monadic rays. I'll give you an example. The monadic ray of the planetary logos of the Earth is the first. If there are 2 monadic rays, I'm not sure what the second would be, but it would be found on this cosmic Attic plane. The monadic ray of Sirius, I'm convinced, is ultimately the second ray. And the submonadic ray is the 6th, and that's a star. The monadic ray of our solar logos seems to start out as kind of a 4, but ultimately go to a 2. So in a way, Sirius and our solar logos have a lot in common on the higher reaches. That's a star. Now, how are we going to talk about what are the monadic rays of a great being, such as the being that informs the Great Bear? Well, I'll just bet, there's some real heavy first ray in there somewhere on a very high level. But of course, it's preposterous to go on and say, I speculate this, I speculate that. It's all possible. But when it comes to the Pleiades, it's got a very, very big 3. And I suspect that one of the monadic rays of the deity in informing the Pleiades is the 3rd ray. But it's not alone. The Pleiades are connected with cosmic buddhi. Page 1162 in Cosmic Fire. You'll get the hint. And the Pleiades stimulate the solar angels. Basically, they're a 2nd ray manifestation. So the 2nd ray play a big, big part in the Pleiades manifestation. Now, some people, rayologists and whatnot, think that because the Pleiades is the hub of our whole system of constellations, that it should have the 1st ray too, also. So maybe we have a 3, 2, and a 1, or 1, 2, and a 3. Anyway, I suspect that, like the Earth, the 3 rays, 1, 2, and 3, are all there. I wouldn't dare to go beyond that. I don't know anything about those other triangles. Maybe some kind of, some kind of astronomer who's also an esotericist. Maybe the Tibetan knows, what those other triangles may be. Study the local cosmos and see where those clusters are, and maybe they are the center of those triangles. When it comes to these big circles, a red, blue, green, whatever, forget it. What are they? They've got ones about whom naught may be said as chakras. And when it comes to a cosmic parabrahm, well, maybe you study the galaxy and the arms of a galaxy and all that, and something may begin to emerge. So it has to be thought through, Chris, obviously. And I've given you my present thinking on it, and I know Nicholas, who's a deep student of these matters, has his own thinking on it, I'm sure. And we'll arrive. The point is, right now, we better learn to live as monads. We hardly can live as souls, but let's also try to live as monads, which are essential spirits, according to our beingness. And Ishtar, I'm looking for the question marks here. So thank you, Michael. They very interesting quotes. Do you think that the quotes 2, 3, and 4, I guess you're talking about the 6 trumpeted words, are the aspects of 1, 2, and 3? In the beginning, the unfathomable, all nothing that cannot be defined, okay? A limited view of quantum potentiality that is a paradox, and then the created aspects to create the mirror as in manifestation of form and illusion. Well, when I look at these things, Ishtar, I do believe, you're on to something here. And let's just say, I'm going to turn now quickly to this page. And God is the big thing. But time, unity, and space are illusory aspects of the God that is, if the God that is never changes. Untouched, because there's nothing else to touch it, immutably the same. So the 2, 3, and 4 are subsidiaries of the one. That's how I see it. And then we're back to God and being. He takes a little plunge into what we become. We become time, we become unity, we become space, and then he gets out of it with what? Back to God and beingness. So more or less, I'm agreeing with you here, but I just want to say that 2, 3, and 4 are aspects of, I would say, one. And I'm not looking that unity is an aspect of time and space is an aspect of unity. I'm just keeping it simple. That time, unity, and space are the 3 subsidiaries in manifestation to God. So the whole thing, look, what does he say? Time and space are their playthings, the masters. They're playing with time and space. It makes one think of a magician. It makes one think of Don Juan, It makes one think of being able to do some pretty strange things with what appears and disappears. But all that's coming, and look, it's not that you don't know anything about it. You do. You've been there forever, cyclically. And that's the amazing thing. How vastly, infinitely experienced every one of us is by being what we are on the higher levels. There's nothing, let me put it this way, okay? There's nothing that has ever happened to anyone and to anything that has not happened to essential you. That means we all share experience, and the little balls merge into the bigger ones, and they become little and merge into bigger ones. Your experience is my experience. Completely. We just have to get to the point where we see it, and we've merged our identity in a greater identity. There's no such thing as encapsulated experience. I'm all alone, and I've experienced something and you haven't. Now, that's on the lower turn of the spiral. But finally, if you've experienced it, I've experienced it. If I've experienced it, you've experienced it. Forever. That's my present view. Now, maybe I'll be laughed out of town, but that's how I see it. So thank you. Okay, friends, I think we're at the end here. Am I missing anybody? Have I managed?
I think you got them all.
You got them all. And someone said, that, someone said, was it Kim? I think, Kim, you said it just does something to my mind. What did you say? Can't handle it all? Freaks my mind out. Yes, okay, good. That's progress. That's great. I think more of us need a freaked out mind as a starter to perceptions which are beyond the fence, beyond the pale. So far, so good. The Society of Freaked Out Minds, maybe that's what we should call ourselves. And are people ignorant of this information? You bet. And do we have a responsibility in that regard? Yes. To teach and spread the knowledge of the ageless wisdom wherever we can find a response. That's our duty. If you accept it as your duty. And, don't be too hard on yourself. You're going to get it. So am I. And one day, the Tibetan would be able to say, and greater things shall you do than I do now, just the way that Christ said the same things, until we've all returned along our emanative stream back to the one universal being. Okay, friends, so just, you know how I always like to end this thing? Very simple. You know, come back down to earth here. And it's the great invocation. So this makes it practical, you know, the three aspects of divinity: light, love, and will, manifesting. And whose responsibility is it? It is our responsibility. That's whose it is. And if we accept that, that's great. And then we work with the chiefs. And if we don't accept it, well, one day we probably will. So here we go. And by the way, I just want to say tomorrow morning, Soul of Nations broadcast, okay? To you will be offering that. So you have the link on that one, I'm sure. It's always the same. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Well, thank you, everyone, and we'll be sending you, Tuya and I will be sending you this brochure. Tells you all about our new group of world servers meeting, and in a number of places in the world, people are getting together to really make that 7-day meeting as powerful and as significant as can be. Okay, so meanwhile, we just go on ahead and deepening our esotericism all the time and helping out behind the scenes in ways that will make the outer plane better. So lots of love, many blessings from Tuya and me and from the whole team, Joe and BL and Michael and everybody that's helping to bring these broadcasts and webinars to you. We'll be in touch. Have a nice evening or morning or middle of the night, whatever it is for you, and we'll be in touch. Okay, many blessings, and bye-bye for now.